King Charles was visiting a cathedral in Staffordshire when a member of the public started lambasting him about what did he know about his brother. Let's take a listen.
How long have you known about Andrew and Epstein? Have you asked the police to cover up for Andrew? Have you asked the police to cover up for Andrew's Charles? What do you think? Should the MPs be allowed to debate the royals in the House of Commons?
Wow, well, we could hear that so clearly. There's absolutely no doubt whatsoever that the King could hear that, couldn't he? It was very loud and clear. And that wasn't a journalist, it was a member of the public. We have the right to free speech in this country. We have the right to protest peacefully. What do you think, Rebecca, about heckling the King like that, almost to his face?
Well, I absolutely think we should be allowed to say what we want to anybody within reason. I wouldn't actually call that heckling. I would call that questions that we're asking all the time in social media. I don't think you're saying something insulting to him by bringing up something that is constantly being whirled around in the public arena. But I don't think you're commenting on the fact that he was unfaithful to his first wife or he has a protruding nose, whatever it may be. I would say that's heckling, and that's what a comedian is. I would never do it. I am a royalist, and I would never do it. And I would die of embarrassment if I had been in that lineup and it had happened to him. But I don't think we can go the way of countries like Thailand, where you get imprisoned for saying something like that. I absolutely think you should be allowed to say something. I don't think you should be able to throw things like the throwing of milkshakes and eggs on politicians. I hate all that, but I wouldn't say that was heckling. And I would say this is a question that we are actually all asking.
Jemma, what do you think? Because it looked, when we saw it and heard it just now, right there, it was so embarrassing. The King must have felt profoundly embarrassed and uncomfortable. Totally get why he didn't respond. He's not going to give chapter and verse of what's been going on to some total stranger in a crowd. Of course not. But blimey, the silence was deafening in response, wasn't it? What did you think of it?
Yeah, I have a level of sympathy for Charles having to sort of deal with this at the moment. And yeah, I suppose there's one part of me that thinks it's useful to get a barometer of how the public are feeling, because at times the royal family can be quite sheltered from that. If you remember when Diana died, and we don't know the Queen's decision, which she wanted to protect her grandchildren and everything, but it took Tony Blair to say, you should probably come to London. So I think it's important they understand how upset people are about how much he's been protected. But that said, yeah, he's never going to say anything, and it must be difficult. And I think it was reported that all of the press descended upon Andrew's house the other day because they got wind that somebody was going to be paying him a visit. I believe Charles, the BBC had a helicopter up, and then suddenly nothing happened. And I think the palace had got wind of just quite how much press had gathered for that. And I think King Charles had been advised, don't go and read him the Riot Act today, because it's a lot for them to deal with at the moment.
James, it's not respectful.
It's low class, isn't it?
Do you think
to be shouted? It is.
Yeah,
it's low class. I just think it's really out of order. He's obviously not a very educated man. Come along screaming at the King. What does he think he's going to do? Sit down and have a cup of tea with him and discuss it with him? What has he gained from doing that, apart from embarrassing himself? I just think it's really, really low class.
Do you think a police officer or protection officer should have hooked him and taken him out of the crowd or not?
That was heckling. Whatever anyone says, I just watched it myself. It's fact. That was heckling. To be shouting out at the King like that, I just think is really low class, and I think he should have been removed.
Do you?
Yeah, I do think he should have been removed.
And then there's, of course, the argument that we've heard from both your co-panellists about, freedom of speech, and we are free to say things that people might not want to hear.
You do, but not shout and scream at someone.
We're allowed to shout and scream, I think, aren't we?
But if you're in a cinema and you start shouting and screaming, do you think eventually you'd be removed by security? Yeah, you would.
I think that's a very different environment.
There's a time and a place.
I think the optics, if they had dragged that man out for asking fairly reasonable questions.
He wasn't asking questions, he was shouting.
Well, he was trying to make himself heard. I don't think it was a tone that should be anywhere near being removed. That would have looked awful.
Did you just not watch it?
Yeah, of course I did.
I think we must have watched two different things.
No, and I said I felt a level of sympathy for him, and I don't think he's ever going to reply. But I think if the police had come and dragged that man away, that would have looked authoritarian.
I didn't say drag him away, I just said remove him.
But then we're in an authoritarian state where you can't even say things that everybody is saying daily in the papers. He's not in a cinema, he's not in a theatre, he's not in the cathedral itself. He's on a line, and also people will say things. We're a Punch and Judy nation. We're people that have always said things in the public domain to people. We shouldn't be afraid to say things. I would never do it. And I do, as you say, Jemma, feel for Prince Charles because it's very, very, very awkward and cringeworthy. But these are questions that he's not answering.
And I tell you what's a lot worse than asking those questions, what Prince Andrew's done.
Right, let's go to Malcolm, who's on the line in Brighton. Malcolm, what did you think of that bloke shouting at the King like that?
I think it was very bad, Vanessa. I had the privilege of meeting King Charles when he was a prince, when he came to Brighton many years ago. He's a lovely man, and I don't think you should behave that way. I agree with the man in the middle. He's
James
100%
Jordan, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
James,
Very
yeah.
much.
He's 100% right. I agree with James. Well done, James.
Cheers,
You are
buddy.
British, and also you don't behave like that. If you're, he's our king now. 100 years ago, something awful probably would have happened to this man shouting like that. And I believe James in the middle, what he said right, he's not a very educated man. He obviously doesn't like the royalty. And I'm a great fan of the royalty because I've met them over the years. And I think it's a disgrace. And not only that, Prince Charles is going through cancer. So is his daughter-in-law. And I think people should realise that King Charles is trying to deal with this in a diplomatic way and everything else. Yes, we do need answers about Prince Andrew. We'll get them in time, but stop pushing the monarchy too far because at the end of the day, it's not fair on King Charles. It's definitely, Vanessa, not fair on the daughter-in-law. And this man really, he obviously doesn't like the royal family. So if he doesn't like the royal family, why go to a place like that and behave silly? Because he's representing English people. And when they see that abroad, because I'm half Ghanaian, and my family see that abroad, they're disgraceful there. The royal family do a wonderful job, and my heart goes out to the King Charles because he's handling this in a very diplomatic way. And it's your friend James there. I agree with him 100%.
Right, Malcolm,
this man
lovely
is not
to hear
educated.
from
Love you, Malcolm.
Have
Very
a lovely
well
day in
said,
Brighton.
buddy.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Anne in Warwickshire. Anne, how did you feel? Because listening to that and watching it, I just felt cold with embarrassment, really, for the King, because he's only doing his duty in a kind of civic and nice manner. And to be sort of shouted out like that, obviously he can't possibly respond. What's he meant to do? And it does leave this kind of atmosphere in the air around something that ought to have been very delightful for the rest of the crowd who were there to enjoy it, I suppose. And do you think it's worse than bad manners? I mean, what do you think of it all?
I do. I think it's deplorable that he just mouthed off like that in front of people.
Yeah.
I can't understand why people don't do it in a respectful way. He's our king, and he's really putting everything into what he's doing. He's been so brilliant since he took over from the Queen, Queen Elizabeth, that, you think, why aren't people looking at it in a different way of what he's doing for the country?
When you think, though, Anne, when you think of Prince Andrew and everything that's gone on, and even yesterday's story that, Adelaide Cottage had been demanded for Fergie and Frogmore Cottage for Andrew, and they were still feeling entitled to these magnificent, opulent residences. Have you felt that the King hasn't taken enough of a stand or distanced himself enough or something? Do you think there's a feeling...
Well, we don't actually know what's going on, do we?
Well,
we
no.
We don't know what's behind the scenes at the moment, what they're planning. So it's all right. I'm watching you on TV and I'm talking to...
Well, I'm talking... Hello, hi, Anne. Nice to see you, my darling.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling. It is a bit funny. I'd love it if we could see you as well. Soon they'll do the technology where we can see you at home as well, which would be absolutely brilliant. Let's talk to Yvette in London. Yvette, it was quite an embarrassing and horrible moment, but should this bloke have been taken away and stopped from shouting at the King?
Well, firstly, I absolutely adore the royal family. I thought the Queen was my nan, and I'm so glad King Charles is doing as well as he is, and I hate to think that he's not very well.
Yes.
But as for Andrew, he's only ever been in embarrassment, and they say, if there's guilt, then they was paid out £12 million.
Well, it's not
You
quite
don't do
true.
that
It's
if
not
you're
quite
not guilty.
fair, Yvette, to say he's only ever been an embarrassment because, of course, he was a war hero.
Yeah.
He was a war hero,
Well,
and he was very
listen,
brave, and he flew,
when he
decoy
was,
flights. He hasn't always been an embarrassment, not all the time.
When he was at the Falklands, my mum actually, because she's a staunch royalist, she actually received a letter from him.
Really?
And that was fine, But now you don't pay someone £12 million if there's not one slight bit of guilt there. The interview he done was embarrassing. Apparently he don't sweat, but then there's pictures of him sweating. And I just don't think it's really fair. And as for, was it King Edward that had to abdicate just because he was with the
Edward
divorcee?
VIII. Yes.
No, not Henry VIII.
Edward
the one who
VIII.
abdicated. Oh, that's it. He actually abdicated and went abroad just because his wife was a divorcee.
Yes.
And they lived happily ever after.
Well, that's a
so
matter
I'm
of opinion. I think if you read the books about that, it didn't look that great to me.
Oh,
but Yvette, we've had the whole history of the entire story. All I'm asking is, should that fellow have been shouting at the king in that immoderate kind of a way or not?
Well, no, not really, because obviously it's not the king. But as being the king, it's obviously a problem to the royal family. Yeah. But then I don't think it's the king's decision, is it? Isn't it something to do with government if something happens to him?
I'm not sure about what particular decision you're talking about. But Yvette, thank you. Let's go to Angela in Durham. Hi, Angela. What do you think?
Oh, hello there. I think I'm going to echo a lot of the things that have been said already. It was wrong to heckle the king in that particular venue and with that particular approach. Obviously, the person felt very strongly about something, but what was going to be achieved by that? It just ruined a public event that was important and that people were really looking forward to. To make a point has to be done in different ways. And yes, it was embarrassing for the king, but the big embarrassment was actually for the bloke concerned. You know, how was the king supposed to answer all of those questions in public? It was a nonsense that just wouldn't happen.
But do you think, though, Angela, in a way, this heckler got what he wanted because we've just played it, it was on the news, it's been on the front page of the papers. I mean, if anyone wanted to make a point, he certainly made a point, and, you know, he certainly got it across, didn't he?
Well, he got it across. He got it across in completely the wrong way. All it did, I think it embarrassed him more than it embarrassed anybody else. So you get the point across, but you have to look at whether that is really ever going to be an appropriate way to resolve the issue, because it wasn't meant to resolve the issue, was it?
No, it was getting it off his chest. But I mean, the reason that we're talking about it and the reason that the media have really taken it and run with it, Angela, I suppose, is because it shows public dissatisfaction. It shows that people don't like it. It shows the level of kind of uprising against it. You know, people really don't like it. And Angela, thanks for the call, because I'm going to go to Elliot in Wrexham, who is on the side of the heckler. Hello, Elliot.
Hello, yes, I am, because how else could he do it? The previous caller says he couldn't do it, he must do it another way. There's no other way he can do it. If you write a letter, they shred it. So he's got to shout over. But he didn't scream, he just shouted over. And he got the point. And it does need raising. What are they doing with all the money and all these properties? You know, it's just a bit ridiculous when I'm feeding homeless people in doorways. Yes. It's very sad.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that Elliot's feeding homeless people, and yet we heard yesterday that Andrew and Fergie have asked for a home each, and they're not just houses. They've got, you know, umpteen bedrooms and sumptuous gardens, and they're only two individuals, just like anybody else. I mean, what do you think of that?
I mean, it just comes across as horribly grabby in a situation when they should be mea culpaing, and there's hubristic actions going on, and they just need to distance themselves from the royal. They need to be out of the royal estate. They need to be out of the public eye, and then the king can get on with doing the things that he's doing so brilliantly. Because I did actually agree with Angela then about it distracting from the reason that he was there, and he was probably doing something brilliant and bringing attention to a very good cause. But also, how else are we going to get these questions across if we don't have a free speech?
But it's not his personal job to do that, though, is it? And especially
the
way he went.
The
heckler.
Yeah.
The way he went about it. It's not his job. I don't care what he thinks about the king. I have my own opinion. So why is he there shouting and screaming, putting it on his phone? I just think it's, like I said, really low class, very low class.
What do you think, Jemma?
Well, I just think, at the moment, there are many people who feel passionately that something needs to change in terms of this very entitled man still sort of leeching, essentially. And I agree with that. And I agree with what you've just said. But I think, I kind of agree with everybody a little bit because I also think he was in a terrible position. But I think there is a swell of feeling at the moment that, like the lovely caller just talking, the cost of living crisis, is inequality that is a big hot topic at the moment. People are feeling so squeezed, and it will cause them to look at the royal family under a microscope and go, hang on, why have they got 30 palaces? And so therefore, why should one go to him when he has done this? And that is...
I think there's a moment where you're saying, isn't it wonderful to love your brother, be loyal to your husband, be loyal to your parents, what we want is family love and unconditional family love. And then there's that minute when you think, well, hang on, wait, actually, in this instance, is it good? Or should you really stand up and be counted and say, I'm just not. Anyway, it's fascinating, the whole thing, and also how involved everybody feels in it, which is enormously. Thank you, Elliot. Thanks all you lovely callers.